Good morning, everyone. Today's video is going to be about a new Codechef problem. This time it's chef and pepperoni pizza. It came in August cook-off 2019, Division 2. And one thing that I want to point out, if Codechef is listening, is that there was too much traffic during this contest that day, and a lot of people could not submit their solutions. And given that it was only for 2.5 hours, we couldn't even wait. Let's get started with this problem. The problem code is PEPPERON. It starts off with saying that chef has a pepperoni pizza in the shape of n by n grid. Both its rows and columns are numbered 1 through n. Some cells of this grid have pepperoni on them while some do not. So we can imagine this to be like a matrix, and it has n rows and columns and numbered from 1 to n. Some cells of these, some I would say some elements of this matrix have pepperoni and some do not. Next, chef wants to cut the pizza vertically in half and give the two halves to two of his friends. Okay, so he wants to cut it into two pieces. Formally, one friend should get everything in the columns 1 through n by 2, and the other should get everything from n by 2 plus 1 through n. Yeah, that's what half means. Now, before doing that, if chef wants, okay, it's optional. If he wants, he may choose one row of the grid and reverse it. And that is swap the contents of the cells in the ith and the n plus 1 minus ith column in this row. So for an example, so we'll directly jump to the input now, and I'll show you what does that line mean. So in here, 2 is my number of test cases, 6 is my value n, that is the number of rows and columns. And these 6 values are basically telling us which cells in the grid have pepperoni in them and which do not. So 1 indicates that there is pepperoni, and zeros indicate that there is no pepperoni in those cells. So my this is my pizza having 6 rows and 6 columns. And what they are trying to say here, the swapping condition is that if the chef wants, he may swap this one. He may swap this one. Sorry, this one with this zero. He may do it. Okay, that's the only action he can perform. He cannot change anything here in between. He can only swap the first cell with the last cell. Okay. Next, after the pizza is cut, let's denote the number of cells containing pepperonis in one half by P1 and the other half by P2. Chef wants to minimize their absolute difference. So what is the minimum value of P1 minus P2? So as I said, this is my pepperoni pizza. If the chef wants, he may swap this first element with the last element. Now, why would he want to do that is because he wants to make sure that when he cuts the pizza in half, that is, when he draws a line between these, when he draws a line between this pizza. So, for example, I have 100 and then 30. So when I cut a line through, I'll have 100 in one half and 000 in another half. And likewise, I'll do that for every, like, that line will cut through every row. Now I have to make sure that the number of ones on my left hand side and the number of ones on my right hand side, the difference between those is the least. Right now we can see that there are 1 plus 1 plus 1 4 plus 1 5 and 6. So there are 6 pepperonis in the left hand side, and in the right hand side we have only 2 pepperonis. So the difference between these two pizzas in terms of pepperonis is 4. Now that may not be the minimum. We might be able to improve upon it. And how is that is, I'll swap this one with this 0, so it will become all zeros and then 1. So that would reduce the number of pepperonis from here from 6 to 5, and it would increase it here from 2 to 3. So it becomes 5 pepperonis on the left and 1 2 3 pepperoni sorry 5 pepperonis on the left and 3 pepperonis on the right, and that becomes a difference of 2. So yeah, that way I can improve upon this. Okay, that way I can improve upon my difference. I can minimize it. Now let's see if we can even produce it further. So likewise, I'll try to swap this second row. So I'll try to swap 1 with 0 again. So right now I have 5 pepperonis on the left and 3 pepperonis on the right. So let's make this 0 and this 1. So I'll be left with 4 pepperonis on the left now and 4 pepperonis on the right. So that will become 0, but this answer here says 2. So maybe we can only perform this once. So yeah, he may choose only one row. So yeah, it can only be done once. So that's why, though we can reduce it to 0, but that's only if we can change more than one row. Right now we can only change two. So sorry, we can only change one. That's why the minimum difference will only be 5 minus 3. That is 2. So yeah, this seems simple. So now we have to think that given this input, how do I minimize it? I'm only allowed to make one change. So what I'm thinking is, given what I think the solution could be, is that let's take this input in a matrix and then and then kind of make two more matrices with number of rows as 6 and number of columns as 3. So 6 by, let's make two 6 by 3 matrices and then count the number of ones in each. If it's, I mean, if it's 0, then we automatically uh, say that there can be no further improvement. But if it is greater than 1, if it's greater than 0, then we'll try to kind of see that whether we can interchange one row's elements and reduce the difference. Now, for that, I think we can use a for loop. And so now one more thing to think about is whether you want to check for that, whether you want to swap after splitting or do you want to swap before splitting. So now I think we can make two half matrices and then we'll keep the original one intact. If the difference is greater than 0 in case of those two smaller matrices, then in the larger matrix we'll run a for loop and try to check whether the first and the last elements are 1 and 0, and if they are, then we swap them, and that way we can again uh, so after doing the after performing that swap, we can again break our matrix into two more matrices. So reinitialize our smaller matrices and then check again. And if that's the case, we can yeah. So if it reduces, I mean, if it will reduce if we can find two elements, like two elements which can swap together, and then yeah, we'll find the minimum difference because we'll find the minimum difference and that will be our answer. So I'll code this in the next tutorial, and till then, uh, keep coding. Yeah. Thank you.